Hey guys, it's Adam, and today we're talking about how to discover your ideal hourly rate. Now, whether you charge by the hour for your design services or charge flat fees, many of us base at least part of our pricing on an hourly rate. Now, this isn't about simply finding a number in the middle and calling it a day. Of course, it requires a little bit of review on our side of things. And that's exactly what I'm going to walk you through today. It's about answering a much more important question. Is your current hourly rate helping you build a profitable design business? Because if you've ever finished a project and thought, that was way more effort than I expected, or I should have definitely made more money than this with all the work and time I put into this, then this episode is for you. So today I'm going to walk you through the 5 essentials that will help you work out whether your hourly rate is actually doing its job. So let's dive in. So essential number 1 is stop copying other designers' rates. So one of the most common conversations, I see online or even in coffee conversations with other designers goes something like this. You might recognize it. One designer asks another designer, what are you charging per hour these days? Then the answers start to roll in. Some people might be charging $120 an hour. Some people might be charging $150. Somebody might say, I'm charging $200 plus tax, or I'm charging $200 including tax, or $300 or $350 and higher. And before long, everybody's kind of comparing themselves to everybody else. Now, I don't think these type of comparisons are completely useless. In fact, I think they're a helpful reference point. If every designer in your market's charging somewhere between $150 to $250 an hour, and you're charging, say, $75 an hour, then that might be worth looking at. But a reference point really isn't a pricing strategy for your business because you're running your own race here. And every business, it's a little bit different. We've got different overheads, different business models, different project sizes come along with that. We all have slightly different systems we use. We've got different levels of efficiency. We've got different staffing structures, perhaps. Some designers have a studio, some work from a home office. Some people have employees. Some work entirely on their own. And all of those decisions affect profitability at the end of the day. And that's why your hourly rate shouldn't be determined by what another designer is doing. You get my drift. It should only be determined by what your business needs to be profitable. So stop asking, what's everybody else charging? And start asking, is my business profitable for me? There you go. That's a far better question. Now, before we go on to essential number 2, I've put together a free resource called the Solo Designer's Profit Guide. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a QR code on the screen right now. So simply scan the QR code and download your copy today. Inside, you'll get the results of 50 designer interviews I conducted across Australia, Canada, and the USA. So you can see what designers are charging at different stages of their careers. And assess where you sit. I think it's a good reference point. But you'll also get my project payoff formula and worksheet. And that's going to help you calculate your profit margin on your completed project. So that means that you can confidently determine whether your current hourly rate is working for you or whether you need to adjust it, i.e. raise it up. Not based on what other designers are charging, but based on the results of your own last project or one of your regular projects. It's simple, it's practical, and it's incredibly revealing when you do this. So scan the QR code on the screen now or visit turnkeydesign.com/profit guide to download your guide and complete that worksheet after you finish today's episode. So let's move on to essential number 2. So number 2 is look at your last project. If you want to know whether your hourly rate is really working for you, your last completed project contains that answer. Not, again, what other people are saying in Facebook groups about what the rate should be in this time and place, not another designer's website trolling around there, not, different industry surveys you see around the traps. Your last project. Ask yourself 3 questions. How much money came into my business from that project? And then, how much money went out of the business? And then what was left over? When I say money coming in, I'm talking about all the revenue generated from the project. So that can include your design fees, revenue from the goods and services on that project, and any other project related income. It could be trade markup or benefit from your trade pricing. Then you deduct your costs from that equation. What's left then is your profit. Now let's keep this really simple. Let's say a project generated $20,000. After everything was paid out, there was $6,000 left. So 6,000 divided by 20,000 equals 30%, and that's a 30% profit margin. Personally, I like to see a minimum profit margin of 30%. Now, that's not a number I've pulled out of thin air. For decades, a 30 to 40% profit margin has often been regarded by accountants and business advisors, especially my accountant, as a benchmark for a healthy business. Businesses need enough profit left over to cover growth, reinvestment, unexpected costs, and future opportunities. It's one of the reasons I use 30% as my minimum benchmark when reviewing a completed project. If you're consistently achieving 30% or more, there's a good chance your hourly rate is doing its job. But if you're achieving, say, 20% or 22 or 25, then your project's telling you something, and that's valuable information. Because the purpose of your hourly rate is not simply to sound, impressive or meeting up or matching up with others, is to help create a profitable business for you. Essential number 3, make the change. This is where many designers get stuck. They review the numbers. They discover the profit margin isn't where they want it to be. And then they carry on. They get a new job and they do exactly the same thing. So if your last project produced a 22% profit margin and your goal's 30%, something really needs to change. And often that change is your hourly rate. Now, I'm not suggesting you double it overnight. You don't need to jump from $150 an hour to $400 an hour, for example, but you do need to make a change. Perhaps you are going to increase your hourly rate from 150 to 180. Perhaps you can move it from 180 to 220. The exact number isn't important, but what's important is making an adjustment and seeing what effect it has on the next project. The other thing I want to say is this. You need to feel comfortable with the number. If you increase your rate to a level that makes you feel nervous every time you say it out loud, that lack of confidence can show up in client conversations. So don't feel like you need to jump to the highest number possible. The goal isn't charging the highest rate in town. The goal is charging a rate that helps you achieve a healthy profit margin. So if you can increase your rate and achieve a 30% to 40% profit margin while still feeling confident presenting that new rate to your clients, that's probably a really good place to be. Essential number 4, look at what you're actually paying for. Once you've reviewed your hourly rate, it's time to review your expenses because your hourly rate needs to support the business you're trying to build. For example, I believe professional photography is an absolute essential expense. Photography isn't a luxury for us. It's a marketing cost. It's how future clients discover your work. It's how publications discover your work. It's how you build authority. So rather than eliminating photography or thinking, I'll pay for that later, I'll try and get that job photographed later when I've got more money, your pricing needs to accommodate it now within that project. The same goes for your website or your email marketing and the marketing activities that help bring new clients into your business. These aren't optional if you're serious about growing, but there may be expenses worth reviewing. Perhaps you're paying for a workspace when a home office would work perfectly well. Perhaps there are software subscriptions that you're no longer using. I have to regularly assess those. Perhaps there are costs that have quietly crept into the business over time that you could, move back out. So take an honest look at those, then review your time. Are you charging a decent enough fee for the consultation? That could be one thing that increases. That'll help your profit margin. Are you adding in all the time it takes to, create a proposal? Design presentations. Are you allocating time for you to go back and actually present to your client for 2 hours? Is there follow-up administration that you need to do after that you haven't previously billed for example? Are there hours disappearing into the project that never get billed? Just have a look at that overall, because that can dramatically affect the profitability. So if you're not achieving that minimum 30% profit margin, review both sides of the equation. So look at the hourly rate, that's really important, but also look at the expenses. Look at the hours that may not be getting charged and make adjustments accordingly. Essential number 5, review, refine, and repeat. This is probably the most important point of this entire episode. You don't work this out once and never look at it again. The designers that are really managing their businesses well regularly review their completed projects. They calculate the profit margin. They review the numbers and they do make adjustments. And then they review it again, because every completed project gives you new information. Every project teaches you something about efficiency, for example. Every project helps you understand whether your pricing's working or it needs to be tweaked again. So if you're trying to discover your ideal hourly rate, again, stop focusing on what everybody else is charging. Review your own projects. As I've said before, you're running your own race here. Just focus on what you're doing. Review your own numbers and review your own profit margin, because that's where the answer lies for you. And if you'd like help doing that, then download the Solo Designer's Profit Guide. It's completely free. You just scan the QR code if you're watching, or go and visit the website, turnkeydesign.success.com/profit guide. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, I'd love it if you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel to be notified of upcoming episodes, and leave me a comment below. How have you determined your hourly rate this year? Are you going to be making changes based on perhaps something you've learned in this episode? Now, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it'd be incredibly helpful if you left me a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But wherever you are, however you're listening, if you're watching, I just want to say thank you for joining me this week. And the one thing I want you to remember, doesn't matter where you are at the moment, if things are going great or if they're not going so great, it's all good. Again, you're running your own race and you are not behind, my friend. You are building. And on that note, I'm going to wish you a wonderful week and I'll see you in the next episode.